He left me his password in a 3-line email that came at 4:11 a.m., the time he always woke when his mind refused to be reasonable. Subject line, for when I can't. Body. Starling, if something happens, you'll need this. Love you. N. Then a string of characters that looked like they had learned ballet in a cage. Q. W2. R4% Y7. I blinked at it while the kettle ticked, and the light from the ferry slid along the water outside like a long breath. I typed the password into his laptop because grief makes you obedient before it makes you brave. The screen went black for a heartbeat. Then a white window swallowed the desktop and a single line of text bloomed in the center. 10 days, 00 hours, 00 minutes. I did what anyone would have done. I clicked everything. I tried to drag the window aside to find the seams of the interface the way you look for the end of a knot with impatient fingers. It did not move. I pressed escape. I pressed Command Q. I pressed my lips together and whispered his name like maybe the code would be charmed to hear it. Noah. The numbers, meatless and merciless, rolled to 9, 23, 59, 59. At the funeral 2 evenings before, a man in a charcoal coat had given me a linen handkerchief with silver GR stitched into the corner and said something about the golden hour of grief, like sorrow was a photography appointment. I watched him sweep away, sleek, precise, and thought naively, you don't belong to my story. Now, with the laptop's white window biting at my eyes and the apartment smelling like tea that had gone from comfort to obligation, I wondered how wrong I was willing to be this year. Noah died in clear weather on an exit ramp he'd taken a dozen times. Engineers at his memorial calling it ridiculous, an insult to physics. He'd been a senior security analyst for Valorum Therapeutics, the kind of biotech with a lobby waterfall and a brand video that could make you forgive 1,000 things on the strength of a piano in minor key. He was the sort of person who remembered everyone's coffee preference and everybody's passwords without writing them down, which is to say, careful. We married in October under a string of barn lights. We were still practicing the strange, beautiful choreography of 2 toothbrushes in the same cup when the world took him and left me a password in the middle of a night. The laptop's clock turned to 9, 23, 58, 40. I said, no, it stayed. I'm a lighting designer. Which sounds glamorous until you realize it means I know more about dimmer racks than most people know about their own hearts. On good days, I make art glow. On bad ones, I fix flickering fluorescence in a city building with more mouse nests than budget. Noah loved to steal me from the theater and take me to server rooms. You listen like machines breathe, he said once. And I tucked it against the inside of my ribs like a warm stone, because sometimes love is that small and that large simultaneously. I called Valorum and asked for Kelsey Hart, the CEO who wrote a condolence email with a tone that sounded like a very expensive clock. She answered from a room that hummed softly. Air handling is the ambient music of power. Mara, she said, pronouncing it right for once. I'm so terribly, there's a countdown on Noah's laptop, I said. He sent me a password and now there's a thing. It says 10 days. Silence expands different ways depending on who is feeding it. Kelsey's expanded like a tent. A countdown to what? If I knew, I said, I wouldn't be calling you. Bring the device in, she said after a beat that could have been genuine thought or a roll through legal talking points. We'll secure it and our team will... No. I surprised us both. The word left my mouth with more iron than I knew I owned. He left it to me. I'll bring screen recordings, and you can send someone to look at it here. Mara, she said, and I could hear her move from nice to neat. Valorum property? It's my laptop, I said. The one you told him to use at home until the new one's shipped. You can send someone, or you can call the police and tell them you lost a countdown. A small exhale that might have been admiration if she were another kind of animal. We'll send someone, she said. Before they arrived, I did the thing I should have done first. I called Luca from downstairs. He lives 1 floor below me in a brick building that pleases itself by party tricking the river's light through all the wrong windows at all the right times. We share a back stair and a fondness for early morning fruit vendors. I once helped him carry a couch that would not turn the corner, and he once helped me install a dimmer that had opinions. He is the sort of neighbor who remembers when you said your mother's birthday is coming and shows up with a small cake and a big apology for not knowing what kind she likes. When he knocked, I was sitting on the floor with the laptop on the coffee table like a shrine, and the password written on a sticky note even though I had already memorized it. He looked at the screen, the white, the numbers. His face did a complicated, quiet thing. I thought about calling the police, I said. He shook his head gently. They'd call me, he said. And I'd tell them to bring chewy granola and patience. He crouched. Close, he smelled like clean laundry and pencil shavings. May I? Please. His hands moved like a person playing piano softly so as not to wake a child. He didn't touch the keyboard, not at first. He followed the edges of the white, eyes on the screen, watching for flicker. No windowed application, he murmured. It's chewing the compositor. That's why you can't click through. He angled the laptop as if sunlight had a role here. It's stubborn, not malicious. Like him, I said without thinking, and he did not nod and he did not say I'm sorry again. He let it be a good memory without defensive annotations. Did he ever mention a failsafe? Luca asked. A dead man's switch? He joked about dead plants, I said, and had to stop because the way he watered succulents was so tender it made me lopsided. It's a security pattern, Luca said, thinking aloud. If I don't check in, release the thing. If I do check in, don't. This looks like a switch. The problem is, he looked up. You say you can't stop it. Did you see a stop anywhere? A continue? Anything? Nothing. He tapped his bottom lip with his index finger. Then it's not for you, he said softly. It's for someone else. But he trusted you to babysit it until it does what it's for. Who? I asked. He tilted the laptop and the countdown slipped to 9:23:12:08. It felt like the difference between a lifeguard who was on duty and one who was looking for a towel. Valorum, he said. A journalist. A regulator. Or... He glanced toward the door as if someone might have arrived in our hallway without walking there. Who did you see at the funeral? I saw everyone, I said, and then corrected myself because grief makes you sloppy with absolutes. Valorum people in black. My mother with 2 gingham tissues. Your landlord's wife because this town is part church potluck. A man with a regatta pin and a handkerchief with GR monogrammed in case I forgot who he was while I used it. GR, he repeated. Graham Rhodes. You know him? Everyone knows him, he said with the same resignation Maeve had used about everyone knowing everyone. Philanthropist. Donates to hospitals. Golf's like a verb he invented. Board member at Valorum. He looked at the screen again, then back at me. Don't let Kelsey have this alone. I told her that, I said. Now she's sending someone. The someone was 2 someones, a woman with a portfolio and a man with an apologetic blazer. They stood on my threshold like people who have been trained to take off their shoes and their humanity at the same time. We'd love to take a look, the woman said, not loving it at all. I'll record it, I said. Luca leaned against the kitchen door jamb, a friendly witness. The Valorum team bent over the laptop and pretended to guess passwords in their heads and made the right noises at the white window. And then the woman's phone buzzed and she stepped aside, and I heard Kelsey use the word cooperate in that elegant way it can mean different things depending on where you put your stress. When they left, Luca exhaled. They'll try again tomorrow, he said. Bring a warrant and a smile. So we have 10 days, I said. Which is also 9. Which is also now, he said. Tell me about Noah. I told him the right version, how he said starling like he had designed the word to fit my shoulder. How his hair made him look like he was always a little surprised in a way that made other people nicer. How he fixed the loose tile in the kitchen, but also left it a little loose because the way it clicked when I stepped on it sounded, to him, like punctuation. And I told him the not right things that grief edits, that he had been sleeping less, that he had spent long hours with a woman at work named Priya, who texted me twice since he died. Once to say he was brave, and once to say, watch your email, and then nothing again. That he had taken to biking the long way home by the river, which was healthy and also odd for a man who used to count steps like saving money. That he had started wearing a jacket with a lining I couldn't stop touching because it reminded me of a coat I had before I moved here, and he had laughed when I pressed my face to it. I don't like being mysterious, he'd said, which is exactly what a mysterious person would say. For the next days, the cat and mouse was the mouse I keep telling myself I am not. The countdown marched. I took Noah's laptop to the office of my boss, a taciturn woman named Dom who believes in chandeliers and honesty in equal amounts. I watched the numbers slip away while I hung a string of Edison bulbs over a mock kitchen set for a commercial that would sell bread by making it look like an apology. I went home and set the laptop on the table and slept on the couch like that would matter. Luca showed up with dinner, he pretended. He had made and admitted he hadn't. We watched the window together like it was a lake and we were waiting for someone we loved to float to the surface. Red herring number 1. Arrived wearing grief badly. Noah's younger sister, Rayanna, hair in a knot. Face composed into that shape we do. When we want to be the version of ourselves other people will forgive. She looked at the laptop. She cried the kind of tears that don't save anyone. She said, "He told me he was going to fix it. He said it would burn down otherwise. He said he didn't want to be a match." Fix what? I asked, gentle, because you cannot interrogate a person who is holding her own clothes on with willpower. The trials, she said. The expansion. Something about the heat maps. She shook her head as if the words could be dislodged. Mara, if this ruins his memory, if this makes everyone look at him and think criminal instead of brave, I don't know if I'll survive that. Which, Hannah in my therapist's chair would have said later, is a way of saying, please stop the countdown. Without saying, I want you to disobey the person you loved most to keep me comfortable. I hugged her because my arms didn't know better yet. I told her the truth I had at that hour. I don't think he wanted me to stop anything. I think he wanted me to keep it safe. Red herring number 2 showed up in Luca's eyes. He watched the laptop with me until the screensaver chose a different view of our river and cartoon boats drifted over the white like they wanted to be helpful. He asked me about my mother's lemon cake recipe and my preference for warm-toned bulbs and my opinion about whether a person can ever keep basil alive in a windowsill. Which is to say, he helped me be human for longer than it takes to swallow. Then he went quiet the way you do when you're arranging words into something you hope won't break people. I should tell you something, he said. Before we go any further, I did contract work for Valorum twice, a year ago, and then again 6 months back, on their SSO. Your husband didn't like me. He thought my solution was overkill. He was almost certainly right. He flexed his hands, embarrassed. It was in the months before you moved in. It's all closed out. You didn't tell me, I said, not accusatory so much as sad to discover that the floor has a third board that creaks if you forget yourself. When? When it was relevant, he said, and then grimaced because he knows me enough to know that I think relevance is a theft if you're using it to excuse keeping something from someone you love. I didn't know a good time. This is not a good time, I said, but I took his hand because an honest thing is better when it's late than when it's false. Thank you. We spent a morning debating whether to plug the laptop into a Faraday bag, then laughing because laptops don't go in bags. We debated whether to move to a hotel, then laughed because we are not the sort of people who feel safer where the carpets are noisier. We changed the Wi-Fi password twice. We took turns going to work and pretending nothing was happening while everything was happening, without asking us if we were ready. Priya texted me again, 3 words. Watch the water. I wrote back a question, and the message hung forever as read, the technological cruelty of people using phones to write in smoke. Midpoint is where the question changes. Ours changed on a Wednesday when I took the laptop into the quietest place I know, behind the proscenium, while a high school band rehearsed on stage and the percussion did its best to sound like rain, and a second window bloomed behind the first. It was there for a blink, like stagehands moving a set piece. Then it was gone. I told Luca and he brought coffee old enough to enlist and we sat again. He did the thing that makes me believe we will know each other when we are old. He said the thing that would make him wrong if it made me angry. Mara, what if the question isn't how do we stop this, but how do we shepherd it? What if the button he wanted you to press was not stop but send? What if that's why he left you the password? I don't want to be a weapon, I said. It came out like a confession. You don't have to be, he said softly. You can be a light. It's the packaging that's different. The truth is the same. The second clanging thing happened then, as if the story wanted to make sure I could not retreat to my old question. A van was sitting across the street with a magnet on the door that said Clean Rivers Foundation in a font that made clean look embarrassed. I recognized the man in the passenger seat because some people wear the same face everywhere like a badge. Hier monochrome handkerchief, man. Graham Rhodes. He pretended to scroll his phone and then photographed our building with the laziness of a person who knows he can buy the photographs he wants later if he failed to take them now. Board member, Luca said quietly. Second biggest investor. Largest donor to Valorum's social responsibility arm. Likes to say golden hour too much. Once gave a commencement speech that made me question if I knew what verbs were for. He's not subtle, I said. The laptop ticked down to 3:10:52:18. The van left. When the car disappeared, my phone rang with an unknown number that I answered because grief rewires the rules. A voice I didn't know said, "If you let it finish, the animals get out." I closed my eyes because panic has a scent, and I hate it. Noah built something, the voice said almost kindly. Don't be idiotic. Pull the plug. I'm recording you, I lied, upright now. Rain began in earnest outside as if my life needed a soundtrack. Who is this? No answer. A click, I can trace that, Luca said, and I did not ask him how he thought he could. He called a friend with a calm voice and a tattoo of a compass and different hair every time I see them in the stairwell, and a knack for making my broken espresso machine work without my feeling stupid. They traced it back to a VoIP block registered to a holding company registered to a P.O. box in a building in the financial district that also belongs to a pizza place and 4 Delaware corporations and 2 Shell charities and a dog rescue with no dogs. Red. Herrings are formal as chess and shameless as luck. The first Ray texted me, I think Priya is using you, which is an unfair sentence in every universe, and I had to sit with that too long before I answered. The second, Luca's past work for Valorum, turned from a red herring to something like a pale salmon in my mind. Not guilt, but context. Then the twist landed with the delicacy of a piano dropped from a modest height. Noah had left me another password. Or rather the same password again, in the only place I wouldn't look for it, under the loose tile he loved to step on, a scrap of paper folded to richness. The string of characters again plus a second line. Song? He had underlined the question mark like he knew what I'd forgotten. What was your song? Luca asked. We didn't have one, I said, and it felt like treason. We had quiet. We had the sound of him doing the dishes with the radio on low and the world sensible. We had the fairy's horn. I stopped. The fairy's horn. 3 long, 2 short, 1 long. The fog days. He had said it once, laughing. It's like when you can't remember the words, so you hum. I typed, in Morse, because my teenage fascination with summer camp had decluttered exactly 0 useful knowledge except this. The back window blossomed again, bright as revelation and twice as practical. SPARROW. Beneath it, a line of text. If I can't, you can. Don't stop it. Add the last key at T01 and then stand back. Not stop. Add. What is sparrow? I asked. Luca shook his head slowly. His bird, he said. His code name. His project. His promise. A whistle. The animals get out, I said, and heard the voicemail differently. That voice meant data. Evidence, he said. He built a release. Maybe multiple endpoints, government, press. Maybe 2, so one can't die in transit. The last key, something only you would know to authenticate the archive. Your testimony baked into the checksum. A way to keep them from discrediting him because the last key isn't a tech artifact, it's love. The storm that came then wasn't weather. It was Kelsey calling, then Priya, then the someone from before again. Then Graham Rhodes' assistant calling to offer a donation to the theater, where I worked in my husband's memory if we could meet for coffee this afternoon. Perhaps. And it felt like being wooed by a man who had learned to apologize only with his wallet. Don't meet him, Luca said. He's a professional eater of doubt. I am a professional maker of light, I said. Let's see if he's hungry. We met at a cafe that had cashmere for furniture. Graham wore less expensive kindness than he had at the funeral. He looked like a man preparing to dig a small garden. He used the phrase golden hour twice and then stopped when he saw me smile, which made me like him for a quarter second in the same way you like a particularly well-groomed wolf. Valorum is under attack, he said, from grief and from rumor. From people who don't understand the necessity of speed when human lives are on the line. Human lives were on the line, I said. That's why my husband built the thing he built. He didn't twitch. He was a contractor, he said kindly, which would have been accurate if it hadn't been wrong. He was staff, I said. With a badge and a parking spot and a lunchbox and a heart. Graham leaned forward. His cuff showed an inch of linen. The GR monogram winked. If you let this, whatever this is, if you let it happen, you could damage ongoing trials. You could torpedo the lives of countless patients waiting for a cure. I thought of Ray's text, the word burn. I thought of a photograph on Noah's phone of a whiteboard full of circles and arrows, and a phrase he had underscored. Heat maps. You're using their hope as a shield, I said. It's effective. It's unkind, he sat back. Mara, he said, and the way he said my name made me want to turn into a number. I can help you. This can be quiet. We can find ways to honor Noah while protecting the people who depend on... My husband left me his password, I said. And a countdown I can't stop. I surprised both of us by smiling. Maybe that was his gift. He knew I would try to make you comfortable. He knew I would fail. Thank you for your time, I stood. The room smelled like citrus and decisions. As I went, he said softly, not unkind, no one will love you for this. I'm not doing it to be loved by anyone who says sentences like that, I said, and went home to my laptop and my neighbor and my courage, which was coming along like a plant in a window that had finally figured out the sun. When I got to the apartment, the door was ajar. The laptop was gone. I stood, the way you stand when you arrive home to a story that thinks you'll ask for gentleness and is prepared to disappoint you. Luca said my name in a way that did not raise his voice and made the air hush. I was gone 8 minutes, he said. The delivery guy, I thought, he didn't finish and he didn't have to. Backup? I whispered. He nodded. 3, you have a phone, he said, and a cloud, and a man who built redundancies because he loved you more than he loved cleverness. The backup blooms were there. The countdown resumed. A note appeared briefly in the side margin like someone writing on the inside of a window. T72, cabin. He'd left coordinates. He'd left the road that gets plowed last. He'd left a place I didn't know we owned. Forced proximity looks good in movies. In life, it means driving north. With the weather threatening and the heat in... Your car arguing with the fog on the inside of your windshield and the person you're falling in love with holding the laptop on his knees because he refuses to let gravity have an opinion it hasn't earned. We reached the cabin at dusk as the world went to charcoal. It was Noah's in the way you know something belongs to someone. A flathead screwdriver by the sink. A blanket in a stupidly nice wool I could hear him justify in 2 sentences. A thrift store mug that had been washed so many times the painted fish had become suggestion. There was a wood stove and a pile of logs that asked to be a conversation. Luca lit the fire like he had written a trauma manual for wood and coals, the laptop's white cut into the room. 211-03-42. This is trusting a lot of code, Luca said, not to scare me but to make sure fear knew we saw it. Deadlines simplify things in the ways you don't want. Welcome your metaphors, I said, and then the power went out. Snow makes sound when it decides to be real. It has weight and an opinion about roofs. The cabin let out the beleaguered sigh of a house that has done this before and would prefer not to do it again. We sat with our coats on and our boots off and watched the numbers move. My phone buzzed with a half-delivered text from Priya that made it through the world's obstinacy. You will need the green spiral. I texted back. What? And the bar gave up and turned into a question. What's the green spiral? Luca asked. A notebook? I went to the corner shelf. 3 books, ancient phone chargers, a coil of rope. On the top, a green spiral-bound notebook, the cheap kind that rusts if you leave it by a sink. I opened it carefully. Noah's handwriting looked like he'd learned calligraphy from a man who builds bridges. Upright, certain, silly when he wanted. Inside were lists. Names of file servers, dates, arrows. My name in the margins with hearts that embarrassed me if Luca saw them. My laughter now was an apology that didn't need to be. Look, I said. Page 3. Sparrow were evidence. Last key, N plus M plus day we believed. The day you believed what? Luca asked. That we could do this, I said. Not marry. That too. I blinked and heard myself say the thing I had not said aloud. I think... I turned a page. A small envelope fell out, addressed in Noah's hand. Starling, open at 1 hour. I put it on the table like a candle. I kept thinking the twist would be that he's alive, I said, because we speak the words you're not supposed to say to keep them from eating you. Or that this is all a dud, a panic attack coded into a window. But this, I touched the envelope. This is the part where I remember he knew me better than I was willing to know myself. We slept badly. Forced proximity means waking to someone else's breath and wanting to match it without waking them. I dreamed of the fairy horn and the fog and the way Noah said, "Light it," when I showed him a set I was proud of. I woke from that dream with tears on my face and my hands in fists, the way you make fists in sleep when you are trying to hold something you know you can't. At T03:12, the door rattled. Luca sat up. I grabbed the green spiral like it was a shield. "It's me," Priya said. "Please don't aim anything at me. I bruise easily and cry when people point." She looked like a person who had forgotten to forgive herself for years and was considering it again. Her coat was damp to the elbows. "He wasn't paranoid," she said by way of hello. "They're deleting as we speak. They're rerouting barrels and boxes. They're moving dates on trials and spreadsheets and hoping no one knows that the trial participants don't move in time." "Kelsey?" I asked. Priya shook her head. Her mouth did not want to say the name and then agreed. "Graham." The Rhodes Foundation hired the CRO. He calls it synergy. I call it conflict when you have a ledger. Kelsey is messy, ambitious, not this. She wants to be in the glossy magazines, not the lawsuit. He wants the wind to blow in the direction of profit and everyone else to act like they just discovered wind. She opened her bag and laid a drive on the table. I brought the index. "It will help Sparrow sort." "How did you find us?" Luca asked. Priya smiled for the first time, small and terrible. "Noah used to send me pictures of this place when he wanted to pretend he was retired," she said. "Said he'd drag you here one day when you learned to stop choosing shifts. We could have been enemies. We could have been two women sitting on either side of a fire dividing our dead man into parts and refusing to share. Instead, we became cousins for one long night. We read the green spiral and the index. We fed the stove and took turns in the cold bathroom and changed into flannels that didn't belong to any of us and used the word we without rehearsing it. Trust tested is less glamorous than movies. It is eyes you keep meeting when you are afraid, and then making yourself meet again because that is what you promised when you decide to let someone be within arm's length of your loneliness. It is me asking Luca to show me his search history, and him turning his phone around without a joke. It is Priya admitting she had waited 3 days before, texting me because her courage had calcified, in a meeting where Graham said inevitable 5 times, and she needed to break it with compassion. In a kitchen before she could stand to be brave. 010311 glowed, a promise opening its envelope. I remembered the little letter on the table. I held it. Inside, a note card in Noah's careful hand. M+N believed on the morning the squirrels got into the bread. I laughed first, then cried, then laughed again because that was the morning in our old place when we ate around the holes like children, and he had said, no one else would see feast here, and I had said I do, and he had looked like a man on a bridge who sees the other side and trusts his feet. It was the day before we signed the lease on this apartment. March 12th, I typed Mar 12. The screen prompted something I did not expect. Are you sure you want to add your key to Sparrow? This will sign and release. You cannot undo. Please tell us who you are. The box sat with its little blinking cursor like a face that refuses to blink first. Mara Quinn Vale, I typed. Wife, partner, witness. It asked for a second signatory. I looked at Luca. No, he said gently. This is your story. It's also his. I'll help you tell it to the people who will hear it wrong, but I don't need to be on the page. I want you there, I said. And the words sat between us like bread. He considered, looked at Priya, who nodded like a teacher who understands 2 kids are about to do the right thing, but she doesn't have to take credit. Okay, he said. But not because I like my name in bright. He typed, Luca Brandt, neighbor, engineer. Loved him too, in the way friends can. That is the sacrificial choice, to attach your life to a truth that will make you inconvenient to powerful men. To put your name on the thing that cannot be pulled back. To decide reputation is weather and integrity is the house. At T000309, the window shifted. It showed me the endpoints. FDA Office of Scientific Integrity, State AG, a consortium of investigative reporters whose names I had read at 3 in the morning when the world had been ugly and I needed to be reminded people can be brave for a living. 3 patient advocacy groups whose executives make good trouble on Tuesdays as if it were their job. It asked if I wanted to include Valorum's board. Yes, I said, and Priya whispered, "He thought you'd say that." The last minute is a choir. We stood. Luca put his hand on my back like a heat pack. Priya set her coffee down and didn't drink it because the room had changed the temperature. The window counted 0, 0, 0, 59, 58, 57. I thought of Graham's cuff. I thought of Kelsey's portfolio. I thought of Ray's guilt and love. I thought of Noah's hands on the steering wheel and the way he looked at the exit sign like it had betrayed him. I thought of the loose tile. I thought of Sparrow taking its first breath. "Now," I said when the window asked for confirmation, and I pressed the key. A progress bar unfurled like a bridge. 100% slid rightward like a clean note. For a beat, nothing happened. Then the cabin made a new sound, multiple phones vibrating together like bees in a brief, holy fury. Emails arrived. Autoresponders pinged. A whir in my laptop like relief. The window turned to blue I hadn't seen it use and wrote SPARROWFLOWN. We waited for sirens. Instead, we got the soft noises of a world deciding what to do with a new truth. A reply from the office. A year's worth of "we received your submission" made immediate. A journalist I had only ever admired in the way a person admires weather asked if we wanted an off-the-record conversation to make sure they didn't misread the heat maps. A patient advocate wrote "thank you" with a heart that embarrassed him in his professional tone, and he let it anyway. And then we heard boots in the snow. With cameras off, you hear different verbs. The boots were slow, Deputy. Pike of a different county, and deliberate, Alana had called ahead, and in company, a second set belonging to a younger officer who looked like a man who still believed his job could be made out of good. They had a warrant. Not for us. For the cabin next door, which belonged to a holding company, which belonged to a trust, which belonged to a foundation whose name sounded like water and capital. They found a man with a laptop and a backdoor to a server and a line of comments that said, "0 eyes on timer," and a look of a person who has mistaken obedience for righteousness. He looked up when he saw us watching. He looked away. We went back inside, shut the door, and put our shoulders against each other the way you do when weather wants to argue. The fair play reveal lived on paper. It was in the green spiral that said, "GR has CRO. CRO labels vials control, and they are not. Patients excluded retroactively to make curve pretty. Golden hour, barn, window to shift results before auditors." It was in the monograms that Graham wore so casually you could forget they were louder than words. It was in Kelsey's emails, kind to me sharp in carbon copy, saying, "We cannot rush" to Graham and being told inevitable like it were a benediction. It was in the text, "Watch the water," which I learned meant the flow of funds into a set of non-profits that gave to Valorum Run Patient, support groups who then testified at the State House for a bill that would have shortened safety windows. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was a system behaving as designed. Noah built a design flaw. The storm moved north. The roads opened. The heat returned to the radiators in my apartment with that shuddering symphony I love like family. The next days were mostly waiting and mostly telling the same story to different people in words I could stand to say aloud again. I told Ray. She cried in a way that saved one person, herself. She hugged me and did not ask me to be different so she could be comfortable. Kelsey called and said, "I should have listened." And I believed her because tired sounds have a way of finding their way past the good coat. Priya slept for 14 hours and then kept 5 meetings in one day like a person who knows where the fire exits are now. Graham issued a statement written by expensive regret. He said the word misunderstanding like he thought he invented it. The AG disagreed gently in print, and then less gently in an office with wood paneling that pretended it did not enjoy being part of the story. A judge issued an order neither of us had the credentials to enjoy reading that still made us go quiet in a kitchen. The night after Sparrow flew, we stood on the roof. The city below did what cities always do, forgot to take a breath and then took one. Luca looked at me like he does when he is waiting for me to say a thing I have been carrying under my tongue and might be ready to release without defiance. I didn't betray him, I said, "because grief's last trick is to make you think moving is treason." "No," he said, "you didn't." I also didn't stop loving him, I said. "I didn't ask you to," he said. "Good," I said, "because love asks you to be articulate when your whole thesis is one sentence with no commas." He kissed me slow, neither claiming nor apologizing, and none of it broke the rules of grief because we were writing new ones with better pens. It tasted like winter and cinnamon and the clean edge of relief. It looked like a person saying yes to now. He left me his password, and it made me into a verb. I didn't stop the countdown because it was never mine to stop. I shepherded it. I added my name where he couldn't. I stood back and let it do the thing it was supposed to do in a world where men with initials, in their cuffs, think inevitability is a person they can marry. When the fairies call at night now, I hear the horn the way he did, not as a warning, but as a sentiment, a sound that says I am here. I am coming through the fog. Please don't collide with me because I have too many good people on board to justify that story. We go back to the cabin sometimes and sit with the green spiral and don't open it. Luca makes a fire like an apology to wood. Priya brings cookies that pretend they are good for you by containing oats. We talk about lighting queues and server loads and new trials that are truly trials this time because women and men who weren't at the table before now have keys. He left me his password. I added myself to his key. The countdown stopped counting down and started counting out. When the seconds reached 0, the world didn't explode. It exhaled. The animals did get out, the ones that needed to. We let them. And in our kitchen with the loose tile and the cat that pretends it doesn't love anyone and the kettle that scolds, we practice the kind of living that doesn't require countdowns to invent urgency. Some nights we sit on the floor and drink tea. Some nights we stand under the bridge and listen to the river tell stories it knows by heart. Some nights we build a playlist, Noah's songs, mine, ours, and the fairy horn slides across the water like a promise we intend to keep.